Hotline Miami. Think piece fodder. The problematic fave. Drive the video game. 10 years ago, Hotline Miami was one of a very small number of favorite indie games to have a conversation about. It was violent, and it was loud, and it was extremely about what it was about. There wasn't subtlety to it, but there was a secret, a story that hid itself from you unless you did something to find it. It had enough care involved in its creation that it couldn't be called completely brainless, but everyone could have an opinion on it. It also looked really cool, and it had amazing music. Hotline Miami is a top-down fuck-em-up game in a genre that wasn't well populated at the time. If you're a perfectionist, if you like being procedural and careful with your gameplay experiences, be warned that the primary engine driving this game is frustration. There's no way to play this game cleanly. You'll die too much, you'll die too fast, you'll die too easily because of something that's obviously bullshit. Recklessness is rewarded, and works, and the semi-random way parts of the level spawn and act mean that there's nothing at all to planning. It's much more about finding what you can get away with rather than what you should do. It's fast-paced, but ridiculously frustrating, with seemingly no actual difficulty curve. It's more like a difficulty cliff, where you're left wondering if you're missing something to the formula, and you're not. For me, I found the play arc experience clear and distinct. Step 1. Approach carefully and die. Step 2. Try mapping out a plan. Step 3. God damn it, it doesn't work. Step 4. Emotional breakdown. Step 5. There's this quiet buzzing. You might have heard about the tension release cycle in games. Very simply, this is a cycle that in order to maximize emotional payout involves making the player tense for a moment, then giving them relief. Hotline Miami has a very weird tension release cycle, particularly as it relates to the walk back. Hotline Miami has 20 chapters, which each total around 60 seconds. The largest levels hover around 90 seconds when you actually finish them, though you'll often take 20 minutes of trying to get it done. It's an unfair, unreliable, ramshackle mess of a game where a number of configurations of some levels will just be flat out impossible, and you have to die to them a few times before they'll reconfigure. It's a game that uses its own glitchy wreckage as an advantage. I lost, and I died, and around 100 deaths I settled into a zen-like acceptance of the failures and started mashing the R key so quickly so I could dive back into the mess again. The frustration part of the tension cycle is cranked up. It drove me up the wall and then unfeelingly, unforgivingly just sat there, waiting for me to either fluke my way through it or quit the game. Heck, it even quits fast for good, snappy rage quitting. In a lot of games, the release part of the tension release cycle is filled with reward, with an opportunity to decompress. Sometimes the release is part of the game's mechanics, where you're expected to take time to go find a trainer, upgrade, or chat to NPCs and work out the plot a bit. You'll find the cache, you'll get some health, you're suddenly less scared, more willing to press on. It's the, oh, I guess I don't need to save that badly feeling games can lull you into. Hotline Miami's release part of that cycle, however, is a dull buzz, and the exact same level you were just in, except now it's almost entirely non-interactive. It's an efficiency most games can't manage. Hotline Miami makes safety into its reward in a way that feels eerie. The reward, the release in Hotline Miami, comes in that instant where it tells you, I'm going to stop trying to kill you. Note that there's 2 levels where the game tells you that, and it's fucking lying. And boy howdy do you jump when that happens. The tension persists and builds through your deaths. The game builds engagement through failure. Tension release. Tension release. Tension release. It's a very pure game in that regard. Almost no reward. But no reward is reward enough. Play is important. Play, in that there is a space with rules and systems, where the rules and systems and the consequences thereof only matter within that space, is something foundational to humans, broader than we sometimes think. Our lives are big, interconnected messes, and there is no true disentangling of the things we feel and live in our day-to-day lives with the games we play. But the rules of play itself are something we set aside, that we see a boundary and at least pretend that the play is apart from all of us. Of course, it isn't. Play gives us catharsis, it gives us emotional insight, it teaches us things. The kid who learns math from playing Pokemon does not forget that knowledge when she closes the game. The adult who learns how well their friend lies playing Resistance doesn't immediately forget that ability after the cards are tucked into the box. And the person who plays Hotline Miami and slips into a meditation as the violence flows around them does not necessarily set that aside when they leave the game alone. We reconcile these ideas rather strangely these days. On the one hand, we have academic sources and the uninformed stocking the same moral panic basket, and on the other we have academic sources and the immediately invested refusing to listen to the other. Play is important, we say. Media is important, but, some say, not so important that I need to criticize it or understand it. Not so important that you should think about this. Not so important. Aren't you overthinking this? I cannot cry at the world, I cannot shake my life into shape, but I can, for a time, set those pains aside and simply pretend, briefly, that the world is so simple as to give voice to violence in this deliberately ridiculous, deliberately excessive world of carnage. It is imagining the world where what can be done with violence is there and for me to do. The game does not question me or contradict me. It barely talks to me at all. For a game that I know was crafted to be played, it is amazingly apathetic in its design. Where, the voice would cry out, are the speedrunner tools? What of the ludonarrative dissonance? Where is there a space for those who do not want to do violence? Games let us create spaces to discover things about ourselves. They let us learn things about ourselves too. I did not believe my reflexes so tight as when I started to replay this game. I did not imagine that I could do such things, that I could try them over and over and over. I do not have to justify myself to the game, though, strangely, I stay now feeling as though I have to justify the game to those who listen to me. As if it isn't a settled issue. As if we don't already have the think pieces written, the violence as narrative writing done, as if it's not settled issues that Hotline Miami is a good game and therefore it's okay to like it. Because individual perceptions and interpretations of media are only meaningful as they form part of a whole. That digression from the norm, that liking or hating something for the wrong reason, is what's aberrant. Play is very important. Play is a contained space. We carry the lessons we learn from play. We have to be able to recognize the transformative nature of play, that we take into ourselves parts of the play and reshape them. Play is important. We love masks. The mask is powerful. The mask, the face you present. We talk about them all the time. Our heroes choose them, our villains cower behind them. Hotline Miami is full of masks, and they divide Jacket as a character between being an agent and being an observer. In all sequences where Jacket has a mask, Jacket is acting upon things. In any situation lacking a mask, he is either dead, an object, or he is an observer, being told to move and act. There's almost nothing that he can do beyond choose what to observe. The game implicitly then makes the masks into symbols of agency. Which, I mean, they already are.
You're afraid, aren't you?
I first played through Hotline Miami with Don Juan once I unlocked it. Other masks were dangerous, they got you killed. Brandon? Move faster into what? I don't see how you could beat this game without using its bad AI against it. They start you without weapons and you need to bust open a door to get in clean. It's dangerous as hell in this place. But I can hide behind a door. Maybe shoot a gun into a corner and wait until the bad guys come at me. Boom! The time a door killed me. The doors I couldn't duck into, the places I couldn't hide, walking past doors and knowing there was nothing behind them, waiting in the hallway for the guy with a gun to get near the door so I could whoomph through, and then his friend was down. The adrenaline, the tiny burst of feeling. Scared of dying, scared of losing. I shouldn't have been there.
I will get us through this.
You push it hard enough and the rage just happens. Frustration isn't anger. Not really. It's different. The texture flows from a different space. Frustration has impotence to it. Frustration knows that no matter what you do, you can never really address it. Anger's deeper, darker. Anger knows that when you get angry, you can make a change, but you will break things doing it. When I put Tony on, I knew the game had to change. I knew there had to be a way through that wasn't about cowering. I wasn't just going to finish this game, I was going to be good at it. And that meant Knuckles braced, deep breath. In we go. And what Tony put in my hands was power. To knock someone down and execute them felt struggling, flailing. If you don't have a weapon, what are you? But Tony was a weapon. Tony was dangerous. Tony wouldn't do well by the game's rules, but he could do it fast. Tony never had a lack of options, but he never needed to feel afraid. People with guns weren't scary anymore. Doors were still powerful choke points, but it was force and violence under my fingertips. I felt confident. Levels weren't mazes of surprises. I knew where I was. I knew what to look out for. I knew who to dive on. Cycling backwards as two guys with bats came at me. It was crack, down goes one, and woof went the other, and jousting forwards. I knew I was lucky, but I wasn't afraid of being dead.
They are just numbers.
At some point, it stopped being about understanding this experience. I passed through some point, and I didn't really know why. I told myself I didn't ever finish games like this. I played to goals, and when I met my goals, I was done. I didn't need to finish Hotline Miami a second time. Why would I? The achievements? Why would I bother? There were even hidden achievements. That seemed foolish to try for. No. Just play the game to the end and be done. And then I came back for that achievement, because I was close. Then that other one. And then, really, some of those achievements weren't that hard to get. I realized that to get an A+ rank on the game's every level, I wouldn't have to do too much more. I just have to get a bit better. A bit better. Tony wasn't working. I wasn't scared of things anymore. I wasn't scared of dying. Now it was a puzzle again, but a puzzle of executions, not a puzzle of survival. I didn't know what I was doing wrong, but I knew I could do it right. I knew I could make it work. That one. Then that one. Just a few seconds more. Widen the combo window. Treat them not like people. Turn the violence into a mechanical practice. Die 7 times trying for the 8th. Reset the level for better weapon drops. That wasn't good enough. Go stand in the gunfire. No, try again. Again. Be better. Better than that. At some point, the mask told me, you'll be told you're good enough. It was a strange feeling. I did like it when the game told me. I just didn't know what to do once I'd done that. So I put Zack on and I tried for bigger numbers. It's said by people above my pay grade that we all wear a mask, that there is always a gap between the person we perceive ourselves to be and the person we are willing to project to the world around us. It's in our language, it's in our names, it's in our jokes, and it's in our art. There is an idea that we need to take off our masks and then show people who we truly are. That a mask being chosen and created is somehow a lesser thing than whatever results of traumas an individual experience lays beneath them. I'm not sure I agree. Sometimes a mask is a person that you can try to be. The storytelling of Hotline Miami is deliberately anarchic, achronic, and an incoherent mess of not quite narrative connective tissues that uses video game mechanics as part of the narrative. In it, there is a story that you can find of the relationship between the characters for whom we have the names of Girl and Jacket. And I quite like the way that story is portrayed. Yes, the story starts with a rescue and ends in a refrigerator. Take those bookends away and look instead on the way the story conveys the meaning of that relationship. You never see dialogue between these characters. You never see a communication between these two people. But the story of Girl's integration into Jacket's life is a slow one. At first, his spare bed has blood on it, showing her recovering from her wounds. Then, the house is cleaned up. Then, you see her around the house, and it sort of culminates at one point with the beds being pushed together and made up as one bed. As simple beads on a string sequence, this probably seems a bit basic, a bit stark. But the things the game doesn't say interested me in this sequence. Particularly, girl comes and goes on her own time. She is sometimes in the apartment, she is sometimes not. Yet, when recovering from her wounds, she is mostly there, but she doesn't have to be. She sometimes is reading on Jacket's sofa, sometimes she's in the bath, sometimes she's in the bathroom and the door is closed. And Jacket respects that. In this game, doors are completely transitory barriers. There are a total of 2 doors with something behind them that you don't treat like a line of sticky tape and flip on through at speed. One of them has a bomb behind it, and the other is this one. In this situation, I choose to read this that in this place, in his home, Jacket simply respects the boundaries girl has. She's busy. She can come and go on her own time, and she is there because she chooses to be. And their relationship, while it starts with a rescue, doesn't jump from rescue to sex to couple. It comes, it has a goal, it has an outcome. It is put to some purpose. And then, in that moment when the adrenaline fades, when there's nothing left to do with it, it oozes out of the fingertips and the ear. That, I think, is the fantasy that lies at the heart of Hotline Miami to me. The implication that somehow in a world that doesn't exist, that's cartoonish and ridiculous, that someone misshapen by experience, someone who likes violence, someone who feels inside themselves that rageful cry out to the sky, can have a place. And not because of a lost daughter or a single bad day as we're so often taught, because those ideas, those fantasies are flawed expressions of the world. It's not something that happens to you in one day. Toxic masculinity fucked me up pretty bad. Wed to sanctimonious Christianity and you have a really rough landscape. No tool but anger, no voice but the rage, and don't you dare speak. Don't react. Sit still. Be someone else. It's so important that you never be affected by the terribleness we talk about. The quiet hope was always that I could be put to some use. To talk about Hotline Miami is to talk about violence and whether it matters or it doesn't. I think there's been a nervousness around Hotline Miami. There's a sort of understated ha-ha-ness to it, this feeling that we're all quietly looking around at ourselves and double-checking that someone appropriately intelligent or important was saying the same thing we wanted to. I mean, yeah, the game's really good. You clearly play it well, but I feel there's an undercurrent of, is this okay? A testing of the winds before we actually commit to comment. I like Hotline Miami a lot. It's a collapse of failure states with a single silver thread of success running through it. A cult classic, as said by someone who actually was in a cult once. Hotline Miami is full of violence and almost silent woman, utterly excessive aggression, a nonsense plot, deliberately obtuse level design, and an almost nihilistic sense of self-unimportance. It isn't a game I recommend as a game in a very general way, because when I write about a game, I tend to write in terms of thinking, who does this game work for? That almost always comes from a personal place, a place of empathy. Now, thankfully, there are lots of people who like this game, and they recommend it enough to one another. That means I get to watch people who have no connection to its source material love it, laugh about it, enjoy it for its hyper-violence, and seeing within it a principled stance of video game violence as meaningless. A conversation about violence as ludic language. Those people are hearing recommendations from other people, or observing the gory combat and conflict, and they're fine. They play Hotline Miami and they're pretending at violence. It's play, it's outside of the self, it's nothing to do with them. They are pretending for a while to be a bad person, and the game asks you, "You're a bad person, aren't you?" And they can gleefully say, "Yeah, right now I am," because within the context of the play, that is all that needs to be true. I play Hotline Miami and sink into the meditation of violence. I sit back and remember feeling the visceral sensation of blood in my fingertips, the adrenaline high of having the other boy on the ground and feeling the spit and blood on my face, and knowing that I'm going to win this time if I can get it done before the other boy, and then the knee comes crashing into my head, but this time I'm winning. This time, if I hurt him badly enough, he won't be able to hurt me back. Don't be afraid. Don't think about how he'll make you pay if you don't do enough. Let it take you. Just do it, or you'll be worse because you hesitated. I don't think this is universal. I don't think that most people who have ever really experienced violence as a loser, as a victim, will necessarily revel in Hotline Miami. I think that playing it, however, I find something outside of my own life, something that is set when I was 6, when I was feeling. I can't necessarily say, hey, if you got the living shit kicked out of you in the 1980s and want to feel something instead of being the one empowered with a sense of fairness, this game might help you get to that place. And I don't say these things because I want solidarity or because I want something cleansing or because I'm a better fan than other people. It's just something that's been on my mind a lot as I run around wearing a frog mask trying to kill a room full of people who are all individually my match 10 times over. It's still so fucking weird to see people who've never been punched in the face talk about the Hotline Miami aesthetic, about how that's what it is now, about how this game can be something like that, a sense of style. You're a bad person, aren't you? Yeah, pretty much. And then I close the game, I take off my mask, and I put on another one as I try to live a better life than the one that I feel I'm doomed to. Play is very important. Oh, and by the way, just in case you're wondering, Hotline Miami's story is about a network of traumatized veterans of America's failed Asian adventurism that resulted in a collapsed kleptocratic criminal state being brought to violence by a distributed network of operators willing to commit to acts of violence against an occupying colonialist force, which collapses when that same network fails to recognize the value of their own members' lives. I think the entire story is, what can you do with violence? And the answer seems to be, if you do it right and you trust the right people, you can change the world. It's about knowing that fighting the bosses and the cops who will kill you on sight and the people who want you to die is not a sin, and that holding on to friends on the edge of the end of the world is very important, and if you fuck it up, you can lose everything. It's the kind of thing I think about when I see people talking about when violence is appropriate, about who somehow deserves to be free from violence, how violence itself is an inherent ill, even as people use it against us, with no retaliatory options except violence. About how violence, even a single short moment of it, a fulfillment of the promise of the protest, can destroy an illusion of power. You like hurting people, don't you?